Jeff and the Rabbi. Well, Rabbi Friedman, interesting, and this is a question I've always had, and I've talked to some people about it. You know, when you read the Torah, and you've read that, right, once or twice?
Just read it. Yeah, that was in a hotel.
Wow, they had it in there? Yeah, I did too, but I didn't recognize half the characters in mine. They were different characters than the one I read before. But on the Torah that I think you read, they mention a whole bunch of things that are a lot of confusing. You know, there's times in there when you were supposed to take somebody outside the community and stone them to death.
Stone them to death.
Yep. There are times in there where, I mean, even says an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, life for a life. I mean, hand for a hand. I mean, there's times in there where it says specifically if a woman commits adultery or a man commits adultery, there's times when you can kill him.
Absolutely.
I mean, a sorcerer, I think you can burn a sorcerer. It even mentions that.
Right.
And I remember one scene in there, you know, where this couple was doing something immoral, and this one guy, was a Pincus, whatever his name, comes up and stabs him with the thing right through him, and he's a hero.
That's right.
So, and you know, and even like parts of the Torah where, you know, you take this town, you come in, you tear down their holy trees, you kill the men, the women, the children, you do all this stuff. So my confusion is, and it might be some confusion with a lot of people today, how come when we turn on the news, and especially if you're watching something like CNN, you know they would love to attack Jews in anywhere you can. Why don't we see the Jews today stoning people, burning people, killing people,
right?
Maybe even marrying 6-year-olds. I don't know if that might not be in the Torah, but all these things like that. Why don't we see that? And why, in the same time, all these countries surrounding Israel, all these Muslim countries, you see it every day. I mean, even the ones that we're not even worried about today, not just ISIS, Saudi Arabia. They're stoning women.
Absolutely.
I mean, if a woman gets raped, it doesn't have 2 or 4 witnesses, I think, it doesn't have 4 witnesses, they can get stoned. So, I mean, I don't understand. So that's my main question, and obviously the more important question, do the liberal Jews in America, especially the ones like, say, in Colorado and Washington, do they have it together? I mean, especially on the stoning thing, I think they have it together more than the religious Jews.
Yeah, well, I know the guys in Washington, you know, they have a whole different interpretation of stoning altogether.
Right, I thought they seem at least to be referring to the Torah when they're talking about stoning all the time.
They're talking about, like, let's get him stoned. It's like
it's a different thing?
It's a whole different thing, yeah.
Okay,
Well, that's a Washington thing.
Okay, well, you cleared up that confusion for me at least.
Right. So, you know, really, it's a good thing you're posing that question to me.
Right.
Because Orthodox Jews are the ones who really have something to answer for.
I agree.
See, the liberal Jews would say, well, yeah, that's all biblical stuff, but we don't believe in that.
In the old days.
You know, that was olden days. So thank God we've gotten past that. As a matter of fact, it's because of stuff like that that we've moved on and we're not hung up back in the old days. The truth is, actually, the Christians don't really have to deal with that same question either, because once they got the New Testament and once Jesus came along, basically Jesus says, you know, believe in me and be a good person, and all of the commandments in the Torah, a lot of those details, like all of that, they were released from. So therefore, you know, all the Old Testament stuff, especially a lot of the, you know, the commandments and the punishments, all that's like gone by the wayside. So they don't really have to worry about that either. Right. They don't have to answer that. They've moved on. Now, the people that really have to answer is Rabbi Friedman.
Yeah.
What's the difference between you and ISIS with their, like, you know, whether they're beheading people, they are, you know, they're smashing the idols. I read in the Bible, it's like Abraham.
Right. Abraham smashed idols.
Abraham smashed a famous story in the Bible. It's actually quoted in a midrash, but we believe in these are the oral traditions. And it says that Abraham's father was an idol maker. And Abraham, when his father left and left him in charge of the store, Abraham took the hammer and smashed up all the idols because Abraham rejected idolatry.
Right. Well, ISIS does too.
And that's what ISIS does. And guess what? Abraham got in big trouble with the king because Abraham was upsetting the regime. Abraham was upsetting the whole culture. Abraham was upsetting the belief system because Abraham was rejecting the belief in idolatry. And that's what it was all about, idolatry. Do you know what the king's name was?
What was the king? What was his name?
King's name was Nimrod.
Oh, that was not. I didn't know that was Nimrod. Oh,
know what the name of the town was where they're smashing the idols?
Ah, Nimrod.
Same idols.
So pretty much
they're just going like after Grandpa Abraham.
Right. What's the difference?
They're finishing Grandpa Abraham's job. They're carrying along the great, wonderful tradition.
Right.
Right. So therefore, you know, it's I think it's some of us getting the you know, ISIS is giving strictly religious people a bad name. So I tell you the truth, I'm not sure how Muslims answer this, but I know as Jews we don't have any problem answering this, because there is such a huge fundamental difference in the entire way that we approach the Torah and our whole Bible than the way they approach theirs, that the two aren't even compared. Like I said, I don't know what a moderate Muslim is, or a intermediate, or a, you know, extreme, or I don't know who these people are. I guess like these guys are extreme. Saudi Arabia is probably not extreme, because if you steal there, they just cut off your hand.
Right.
I guess that's not extreme. And if you commit adultery, they behead you. So.
Oh, I thought they stoned you. They behead you or stone you?
Well, you're right. They probably stone you.
I don't want to get my killings wrong.
They just stone you. So I don't know like what makes it, but I guess like you have to at least.
Which, by the way, is a better sport to watch because it lasts a little bit longer. The beheading, it's over in like seconds.
Right.
Stoning, you get crowds. You know, people buy a lot of the peanuts, popcorn, and stuff. So it lasts a little bit longer.
Work in the crowd.
Right.
I think that I've been able to distinguish between the radicals and the moderates.
Right.
Is that the radicals will stone you or behead you for just being you, right? And the moderates only behead you if you've committed a crime.
Right.
You know, so that's, you know, that's already like within the
well, there we go.
Understanding. Okay, this is the best I've been able to understand. But getting back to us Torah guys, why is it that when I look at these guys, and these guys are like a caricature, as a matter of fact, they make me embrace my Torah belief, because they are what I would be if it wasn't for the fact that when the Torah was given, it came with an oral teaching that explained it, and not only that, with an entire methodology which tells us how to read it. And this oral teaching was passed along orally, father to son, rabbi to student, for centuries, and actually began to be written down 500 years before Muhammad ever showed up. And the Talmud, which was the entire redaction of how this oral law works, was all written down 200 years before Muhammad ever walked the face of the earth. So the Jews have been doing this method since really forever, but it's even been written in books in the past so many, I don't know, 100 years, ever since 500 AD. So it's been around a long time. So let's just take, for example, each and every one of these cases. We'll start off with the guys who are smashing the antiquities. Now, if I got the opportunity, it says clearly in the Torah that we're supposed to break down and destroy all of their idols.
Right.
Well, there you got a bunch of statues in this antiquities place, which, by the way, just as an aside, you know, when the Western powers went out to the Middle East, going back in the 19th century, and they discovered all these places, so they took all this stuff and they carted it all off, and they've got it in museums in the West. Now, as time went on, people were really upset with those imperialistic, colonialistic white guys who think that they own the whole world, and they took the stuff away from its natural owners and carted it off and put it in their museums, like they total disregard for all the locals.
Right.
Right. Now, turn the clock ahead 150 years, okay? Which ones still exist?
Good point. Yeah, I think we need more of those nasty white guys to take away
some of the
and
put
Nimrod statues somewhere else.
Put them in museums and places where they really care about them, rather than the local guys who anything that's still there is rubble now. You know, it managed to last only about 30 centuries or so. But after the first 30 centuries, it contended with a lot of things, but they never dealt with ISIS.
Never dealt with people.
ISIS just took care of that. You know, they took those guys out right away. So anyway, as an aside, getting back to where we're at, the Torah says you're supposed to smash the idols. So now the Muslims, they are rigorously monotheistic. They hate idolatry. They have no symbols in their mosques.
Right.
You know, not even like their crosses or anything. You know, that even the Christians who don't, well, maybe Catholics. You know, they put the Jesus on the cross and all that. But even the more liberal Protestant denominations have crosses. The Muslims don't even have that. They don't have any symbol that symbolizes their religion, particularly. You know, the crescent and the star, that's all different. That doesn't symbolize their religion per se. So they don't have anything. They're very, very rigorously monotheistic. They hate idolatry. The Torah hates idolatry. The Torah is rigorously monotheistic.
Right.
Why haven't Jews, if I was visiting there, why wouldn't I grab a sledgehammer and just go at it? You know, the answer to that is, when you study the law, you find out it's just not simple, cut and dry. It has to be read and understood according to a particular methodology.
Now, you understand this is why there are more Jewish lawyers than there are, I guess, Muslim lawyers.
That's right.
We're about to find this out right now.
That's right, because you have to read it really carefully and understand it. So after the Talmudic analysis, and this is what I want to reiterate, Talmudic analysis is not just a new liberal way of looking at the Torah. First of all, it's really, really old. It goes all the way back as long as the Torah was. It was already recorded. It began to be recorded already 18 centuries ago. It was recorded in written form, you know. But it's ancient even long before that.
I mean, Moses began the oral.
Moses began when he told the people, this is what the Torah says. He said, this is how you should understand it. Now, for example, let's say I have an idol. So there's an idol, I don't know, some, you know, a statue of, who knows, some, a winged lion and with a big beard on him and something like that. You know, like this guy getting taken out right here by the ISIS guy with the pneumatic drill.
Right.
Okay, so, and people are worshiping that thing and all that. As time goes on, if the idol is decommissioned by people who would have or could have worshipped it, then it's not an idol anymore.
Which clearly this one is not.
Right, because whoever, like some centuries ago, people said, these are not idols anymore. We're not worshiping these guys anymore. As a matter of fact, what we're going to do is we're going to put them in glass cases, and we're going to look at them as interesting relics of a different era. They're works of art. People study them to understand the advancement of civilization, but nobody, I don't believe that there's anybody, maybe there's somebody, there's always probably a guy living in San Francisco or something.
I assume.
But hardly anybody is looking at them as idols. And once a idol worshiper, or someone who could be an idol worshiper, not a Jew, Jews can't decommission idols.
Right,
but once a non-Jew decommissions it and says it's not an idol anymore, it's just a smiley face, or it's just a whatever it is, it's not an idol. And it doesn't need to be killed. Doesn't need to be smashed.
For you liberals out there, I'm going to try to put this in, you know, TV terms. It's like Reuben Stoddard, the second American Idol. And for the American, nobody listens to him anymore. No one even knows who he is anymore. He's been decommissioned.
Right.
So it's for you people just watch TV. He's not an idol anymore. Where Carrie Underwood or something like that would be. But Reuben Stoddard is a decommissioned idol. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm just here to help out the people that just watch TV.
I'll trust you on that.
Okay.
I'll trust you on that.
I'm helping you out.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, he speaks English.
Right. I'm sort of like the guy with the deaf that did the translation for the people that don't understand where you're coming from. Okay.
So if a non-Jew has decommissioned it, and these certainly have been decommissioned, no one worships them anymore. They're not idols. You only are supposed to destroy an idol that people are actively worshiping, and they attach themselves to as an idol. That the Torah says, no, we don't tolerate idols. Okay? So I haven't seen too many of them idols around. Let's talk about another example you brought up, the classic example. You know, in Saudi Arabia today, if you steal, they catch you, they cut your hand off. Yeah. You know, so one thing's for sure, he won't be grabbing anything anymore that doesn't belong to him.
Right. And it is clearly written in the Torah, an eye for an eye,
right.
Tooth for tooth, a hand for a hand.
That's right. That's right. So, hey, how am I sitting here putting them down, when it's my very own Torah saying the same thing? Again, oral law. Oral law says, eye for an eye, tooth for tooth. It says it means the monetary value. If a guy knocks out someone else's eye, you have to pay the monetary value of the eye. So, well, where do they get that from? So I'm not going to get into a whole Talmud lesson here and show how they get that. But you might have another question wondering, well, if the Torah said pay him money, why didn't the Torah say, pay him money? The Torah says an eye for an eye. Now, we Orthodox Jews understand that to mean an eye for an eye means the value of an eye for an eye. If A knocks out B's eye, then A has to pay the value of an eye. And there's a whole discussion in Talmud, how do you
And
assess
I assume
the
that
value of
also
an eye?
transfers if he knocks out his or kills his cow, you pay the value of the cow. I assume that's the same.
Right, exactly,
Right.
exactly. So, anything, the value, just like his eye, you pay the value of the eye, cow, like if my cow kills his cow, okay, so, you don't have to kill my cow. Well, in this case, you would kill a cow because you don't want a cow around that has killed another. You don't like him around. That's a different story. But anyway, why didn't the Torah just say it? Why didn't the Torah say he has to pay him money? The answer is that many times you say things, and the way you say it conveys a message. And the message that's being conveyed is that you, perpetrator, have to try to make whole that eye. You are replacing that eye to the best you can. And you have to assess how much did he lose from losing the eye? How much was his pain? How much was his suffering? How much is his decreased income and all that stuff? You are doing that many times. Things are on the books to send you a message. The truth is, for years and years and years, there were sodomy laws on the books. I don't know how much they were enforced. I mean, I'm sure they were enforced here and there, but by and large, they were probably much less enforced than they were enforced.
I would assume so.
The reason they were on the books is because the society was making a statement. We believe that that type of activity is repugnant, so they left it on the books. When the society stopped believing that that was repugnant, they took it off the books. But it was on the books more so to make a statement than it was to actually enforce those type of activities. I don't know that maybe if they wanted to, there was always there to be had, but by and large, it was more of a message. And many, many things in the Torah like that, it's stated in a way to send a strong message so that we understand a value. But in a practical sense, you're not cutting off the guy's eye or poking out the guy's eye or cutting off his hand.
Right. Or, yeah,
right.
Okay.
Now, even death penalties. Have you ever heard, when's the last time a group of ultra-Orthodox Jews executed someone?
I don't think it's, not in my lifetime, I can tell you that much. Yeah.
Not in your lifetime, and not in the lifetime of probably 20 great-grandfathers of yours, right? Going back. Like, it hasn't been done for a whopping long time.
Even though you were allowed to kill your son if your son misbehaves and whatever, that hasn't really happened.
That was another classic one. It says if your son has just become a delinquent, and you try, and ultimately the parents give up, and they go to the court, and they say the son's a delinquent, he's a thief, he's a drunkard, and we can't do anything with him, and he says he should be put to death. In the Talmud, they discuss it. And the Talmud has like a whole bunch of details that have to be satisfied in order for that to happen. And the Talmud comes to the conclusion and says, you know what? In truth, they never put anyone to death. Never happened. Right. It never once happened. Now, why is it on the books? Because it's important. It's important to be on the books so that all kids know and everyone knows that delinquency is a bad thing. That being a drunken, gluttonous thief is a disgusting thing and deserves to be put to death. Now, in practice, maybe you never will be put to death, but it's good for a society to make certain statements like that. But I don't know what they're doing now, but I do know that I heard this one like firsthand or secondhand, actually. My sister was speaking to a fellow, an Arab, worked near her. She lives in the West Bank. And she said, I haven't seen you around for a while. Where you been? And he said, well, my sister died. Really? What happened to your sister? Well, she was fooling around, and my father had to kill her.
That happens.
He had to. Had to. I mean, listen, if you don't, look what's going to happen. The families, things are going to go crazy. Okay? Now, why haven't Jews been doing that? Why don't you find that amongst the Jews that they had to kill her? Well, we haven't heard about that for a long time. And that is because taking the law into your own hands is a very dangerous thing. Jews do not execute or even give corporal punishment. Even corporal punishment, just like, even like lashes or anything like that, because we don't have a court system. And because we don't have a court system, we don't have the checks and balances in place.
Right.
If there would be a court system, the court system is rigorously run so that only very, very few, if anyone, ever actually is punished by the court, and we can be sure of that. But once we don't have a court system, we don't punish anybody. Let no one punish anybody, because we can't take the chance that we might be punishing an innocent person. So
when you say we don't have a court system, we have a system of laws and judges.
We do have a system of laws that we follow, and we have civil judges nowadays. Yeah. And if a person, let's say 2 Jews get in an argument over a civil matter, they can go to Jewish judges who will decide civil matters. And it's even respected by the laws of the United States of America, because they sign on to a binding arbitration agreement, and let the Jewish court will decide that. But no punishments, no corporal punishment, no capital punishment. We haven't done that for millennium.
And obviously, Israel as a country.
Israel as a country. Actually,
they've only executed one guy, though.
Only executed one person.
And he probably was a little bit deserving. That was Eichmann, so I think he probably was a little bit deserving on that.
Right. So Eichmann, yeah. So Israel's executed him. Israel's a state. So states have the right to make laws, and that's a different story. And the laws are not necessarily Jewish laws. They're just laws. Right. However they made them up, they don't necessarily follow anything particularly Jewish in the state of Israel. But Jewish religious courts do not
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Punish, certainly not capital punishment, not even corporal punishment. You do not find a Jewish court like somewhere in the depths of Mea Shearim giving a guy lashes. They don't do it.
Right.
They just don't do it. Nobody does it. It's not there. Why? Because we don't want to take any chances. When we have our own land, when we have a king, when we have duly empowered courts that we can trust, will make sure that everything will be carried out in a decent fashion. And even then, there's no such thing as cutting off a guy's hand or poking out a guy's eye by a Jewish court, even when we had a court. There are really basically only 2 punishments. There's a death penalty, and there's corporal punishment in the form of flogging. And they will give a guy lashes. And even then, the purpose of the lashes is not to hurt him. I recently just heard that I think it's in Saudi Arabia, some guy was sentenced to flogging. He gets to come back every week for 10 lashes.
Because they want him to heal up a little bit so they can do them again.
Because if the lashes are so tough that if they give him more than 10 in a week, it'd probably kill him.
Right, and I think they had to delay it because he was not healing that quickly.
So they had to say, he comes back every week to get 10 more.
And that's for blogging, though. That I don't blame him. He was a blogger.
Right.
So that might be a problem.
We don't do that. We don't do that. Even in the times when they gave out lashes, it was public humiliation. It was with a big fat strap that really couldn't hurt anyone. But it was just a public humiliation. They would announce what the sin was, and they'd give him the lashes. It was all about humiliation. But it wasn't about actually hurting the guy, because it wasn't. The humiliation was intended to be a deterrent, not the pain.
Right.
But we haven't done that for a millennium now. It's out. We don't do those things anymore. So and all the people that I'm talking about are ultra radical Orthodox, right?
Right. Well, I think maybe you need to explain, because one thing, because it's still probably, if there's people out there listening and saying, this is just, being hypocrites. It's Rabbi Friedman being a little bit of a hypocrite here. It says in the Torah you're supposed to do this, and now he's just making up these excuses.
Right.
Now, there was a big argument back in, 1,000 or so, was it the Sadducees? I don't know if they were
Sadducees and
Pharisees arguing over, should we literally take the Torah word for word?
Right.
And they lost out. Now, what happened there? And
you see, that's the first thing. Is like, this is not revisionist theory I'm coming up with.
Okay.
I'm being like straight Talmudic, okay? Straight Talmudic means, for sure you could go back to the year 500 AD. That's for sure. So if anything, I'm like easy 1,500 years. Like, and this is not some nouveau liberal idea.
You didn't just come up with this thing. Okay.
Didn't come. It's so easy.
Right.
If 1,500 years old for sure, truth is much, much, much older than that, and there's enough documentation to show that. But it was written down in its final form already 1,500 years ago. So Jews have been doing it this way since basically forever. When the Torah was given, it was given with an explanation orally. This is what it means. Now, when it says an eye for an eye, that means we give the monetary value of an eye. Right. And that is an eye. So that is an eye for an eye. The money is an eye for an eye, and so on and so forth. So all these laws that I've just mentioned, and the fact that you can't execute, not only can you not execute when there's no court, you can't even execute when the court is not sitting on the Temple Mount in session. If the court is not even occupying its chambers on the Temple Mount, no executions can be done because we're afraid to do any of this stuff on our own. Now, of course, these guys, they just can't wait to execute people. I mean, that's the whole...
Well, they feel that's their whole duty to do.
That's what they're doing.
Now,
right?
would the Sadducees, would they have done that as well?
You know, it's hard to tell the Sadducees were, because the Sadducees were really just trying to make it in the Roman world. First the Greek world and then the Roman world. They just wanted to be with it, you know. So it's hard to tell how really, really religious they were.
I got it.
You know, they were kind of like a liberal group.
So it's sort of like the guy who go eat a cheeseburger at McDonald's today because it doesn't specifically say in the Torah that you can't mix, if that's meat at McDonald's, I'm not sure, that meat-like substance with that cheese-like substance. It doesn't say that.
Right.
So that's kind of what this is.
Right. So, you know, the truth is, you know, this same oral law that tells us, like, not to kill anyone nowadays and not to cut off hands and not to smash idols, you know, that they're not being worshipped anymore. That's the same one that also tells us not to eat the cheeseburger and all that stuff. So it does lots of interpretations. But these are classic interpretations that are centuries and centuries old, that you know, predated Jesus and certainly predated Muhammad, and that's the way the Jews have been doing it since forever. That's not liberal, that's not reform, that's not conservative, that's just the way it's been.
Okay, the one question I think I need to clear up for all our viewers here, because they're probably kind of worried about this. Let's say Rabbi Friedman gets a group wants to take them on a great exploration vacation, and you know, into the Andes, you know, down the Andes somewhere in South America. They take you down there, and you come upon this tribe down there, and it's just been discovered, this tribe, and there they are, and you came in there worshiping this big statue of a beetle. Are you, Rabbi Friedman, going to smash that beetle?
Now that, if they're worshiping the beetle, right?
I don't mean Ringo. I'm talking about a real beetle.
Right. That's like this whole tribe of guys that got like long hair, like just down the right. Right. Instead of wearing bell bottoms. Right. So no shirts, but they're all wearing bell bottoms. Right. So, you know, are we supposed to destroy? So if it is, yes, if it is within our ability to destroy idolatry, like idolatry that is being worshipped as idolatry, yes.
Even somewhere where it's not going to come in contact with the Jewish people. It's out in the middle of the Andes, and it's not going to corrupt anybody.
Okay. So the truth is, the Torah's commandment is particularly for Israel, not to tolerate any idolatry in Israel. And we're supposed to not tolerate that, because if we tolerate it, people end up being attracted to it. Now, of course, that was then. Maybe people wouldn't be attracted to it now. And I guess it seems like people wouldn't be attracted to it because you don't find too many people except the guy halfway up the Amazon River and all that. By and large, we don't find too much of that. But, you know, I'll tell you the truth. Even today, there is an issue. There are some people. Let's say there is the pornography shop.
Right.
Pornography shop opens in Jerusalem. Okay, so there's a big debate within the community, like how to deal with that. And some people say, I'll tell you how to deal with it. You deal with it with a firebomb. That's how you deal with it. Right? Yeah. That's what some people say. And other people say, no, that's absolutely not the way you deal with it. You're not allowed to do that. So there is a debate even within the Orthodox community about certain things. But the deal is there that ultimately why I believe even the firebomb guys are wrong today, they're wrong, is because their attitude is protection. I need to protect myself and my children from this onslaught of this horrible thing that is going to affect me and my children. And therefore, I need to do whatever I need to do to take action against it, to remove it. But really, although the Torah says that, and the Torah does talk about, like in Israel, if there are idolaters, you have to get rid of them.
Right.
But the truth really is that if it's Jews that are perpetrating this, what the Torah really says is that you've got to speak to the owner, encourage the owner, talk to the person who's doing the thing to change them. And that really says, rather than trying to wipe out the evil, you're supposed to see to it that evil is removed. So we spend a lot more time, as a matter of fact, all of our time, focused on trying to teach and trying to explain and trying to convince people to abandon things like that rather than throwing firebombs and smashing windows.
So now I guess you probably all understand why the rapid growth of ISIS and the non-rapid conversion and growth to Judaism were not that fun.
Right.
They're out there killing and burning and firebombing and stoning and
Right.
and having a great time. That's got to be. It's more enticing than hey, let's sit down and have a talk.
And you do see who gets attracted to that.
Yeah, without a
Who's
doubt.
attracted to that is young people, particularly angry young people, who are looking for a way of expressing themselves and finding a certain dominance by perpetrating acts upon other people.
So while they're doing that, the little Jewish boys are going to law school.
Yeah.
And I guess that's the answer. Actually, very interesting, and I think this is because a lot of people do. What's the difference? Why aren't we out there bombing and killing? Well, now we know.
That's
So
right.
if you guys see Rabbi Friedman in the street, you don't have to cross the other side.
That's right.
No head cutting here.
Don't worry about me. Don't worry about me.
He's fine. He's safe. He's a nice guy.
That's right.
All right. We'll see you next week.